There's a specific moment that privacy researchers describe as the point of no return for Chrome users in 2026. It is not the moment Google announced Privacy Sandbox in 2019 and promised to fix cross-site tracking. It is not the moment in July 2024 when Google first admitted it was not going to eliminate third-party cookies after all. It is not the moment in April 2025 when Google officially canceled the entire 6-year Privacy Sandbox initiative and confirmed that third-party cookies would remain in Chrome indefinitely. The point of no return is July 24th, 2025. That is the date Google permanently disabled all Manifest v2 extensions across all standard Chrome channels. That is the date that uBlock Origin, the most downloaded and most trusted privacy extension in the history of browser software, with over 39 million users relying on it to compensate for everything Chrome was not doing to protect them, was killed inside Chrome. Not downgraded, not replaced, disabled. The message that appeared in millions of Chrome browsers worldwide was precise. These extensions are no longer supported. Chrome recommends that you remove them. The last tool that 39 million people had been using to make Chrome behave like a browser that respected their privacy was turned off by the company that makes Chrome. And the reason that company had for turning it off is the same reason it has for every privacy-adjacent decision it has ever made. Google is the most profitable advertising business in the history of human commerce. In its most recent fiscal year, Alphabet generated $350 billion in revenue. 77% of that came from advertising. Not from search quality, not from browser development, not from making Chrome fast or secure or private, from advertising. And a browser extension that blocked 39 million Chrome users from receiving those advertisements was not compatible with that business, so they changed the extension framework. They called the new framework Manifest v3. They said it was about security and performance, and on July 24th, 2025, they used it to permanently disable the most effective privacy tool Chrome users had. That is the point of no return. Because what it proved is not that Google made a bad decision. It proved that Google made the decision that its business model required. And if you understand that, you understand why deleting Chrome in 2026 is not a privacy preference. It is the logical conclusion of the evidence. Start with the number that makes everything else make sense. 83 billion. That is the number of active Chrome users as of 2025, up from 3. 62 billion in 2024 and 46 billion in 2023. Chrome is not just the most popular browser. Chrome is the default gateway to the internet for a number that represents roughly half of every human being alive on Earth. And the specific significance of that scale is what Google's advertising business depends on completely. Because Chrome's value to Google is not as a browser. Chrome's value to Google is as a data pipeline. Every website you visit in Chrome, every search you run while Chrome is open, every form you fill, every video you watch, every product page you browse, every news article you read, every symptom you search for at 2 a.m. when you are scared and do not want to tell anyone, all of it passes through Chrome before it gets to you. And Chrome sits between you and that content, not as a neutral window, but as a tool whose architecture was specifically designed to maximize the data that flows from your behavior back to Google's advertising infrastructure. The colorful circle icon is not a door. It is a one-way mirror. You look through it at the internet. Google looks through it at you. The Privacy Sandbox story is the most detailed available account of what Google does when its data collection practices are subjected to regulatory and public pressure. And understanding that story in full is what makes the April 2025 cancellation and October 2025 shutdown of the entire initiative the specific moment that tells you everything you need to know about whether Chrome's privacy problem is fixable. In 2019, Google announced that it would phase out third-party tracking cookies in Chrome by 2022. Third-party cookies are small pieces of code placed in your browser, not by the websites you visit, but by advertising companies and data brokers whose code runs on those websites without your knowledge. These cookies follow you from website to website, building a detailed profile of your interests, your health concerns, your financial behavior, your political opinions, your relationship status, your psychological vulnerabilities, all inferred from the pattern of where you go and what you look at across the web. They are the technical foundation of targeted advertising. And Google said it was going to phase them out and replace them with something better, something privacy-preserving. The 2022 deadline passed. The cookies were still there. Then the 2023 deadline, still there. The 2024 deadline, still there. Then in July 2024, Google changed direction entirely. Instead of phasing out cookies, they said they would offer a user choice model. Users could opt out if they wanted to. Then in April 2025, they changed direction again. No user choice interface, no additional prompts. The existing controls buried in Chrome's settings would remain unchanged. Third-party cookies would stay on by default. And then in October 2025, Google shut down the Privacy Sandbox completely. All 10 remaining Privacy Sandbox APIs deprecated. 6 years of work, billions of dollars of industry investment in adapting to the new APIs. Every privacy promise that justified keeping the cookies while the replacement was built. All of it ended in a press release. Technology analyst Eric Seufert said Google today effectively discontinued its Privacy Sandbox for both Chrome and Android. The cookies are still there, the tracking infrastructure is still running, and the 6-year promise that it was going to be replaced is gone. What replaced it is nothing. Now let us talk about what was happening to the 83 billion Chrome users during those 6 years, while Google was promising to fix things. Because the cookies are not the only tracking mechanism running on your Chrome browser, and they're not even the most concerning one in 2026. The most concerning one is browser fingerprinting. And the reason it is the most concerning is captured in a single technical fact that you need to understand completely before you understand what the post-cookie tracking landscape actually looks like. You cannot delete a browser fingerprint. Every time you open a browser and visit a website, your browser involuntarily reveals dozens of technical details about itself and the device it is running on. Your screen resolution, your operating system version, the exact fonts installed on your system, the way your graphics card renders specific visual elements, your time zone, your audio hardware configuration, the browser plugins you have installed, the way your device draws specific patterns at the pixel level. Individually, none of these things identifies you, but the specific combination of all of them together creates a profile that is statistically unique for 83% to 90% of users, according to research from Am I Unique, org, and the Electronic Frontier Foundation's Panopticlick project. And unlike a cookie, this fingerprint is not stored on your device. It is calculated on the fly by the websites you visit. There is nothing to clear in your browser settings because there is nothing stored in your browser. There is nothing to delete because the fingerprint does not live on your machine. Even in incognito mode, your fingerprint is identical to your regular browsing fingerprint because it is based on your hardware and software configuration, not on stored data. Incognito mode hides your browser history from other people who use the same device. It does not hide your browser fingerprint from the tracking infrastructure that is running on every website you visit. A peer-reviewed study from Texas A&M University and Johns Hopkins University, published in 2026, provided the first documented proof that the $600 billion online advertising industry has moved on from cookies as its primary tracking mechanism. In 2026, Google announced they would no longer prohibit their advertising customers from fingerprinting users. The UK Information Commissioner's Office sharply criticized this move, highlighting the growing regulatory tension around fingerprinting practices. Read that sentence again. Google, the company that spent 6 years promising to make Chrome more privacy-friendly, announced in 2026 that it was removing its prohibition on advertising customers using fingerprinting to track Chrome users. The Privacy Sandbox was supposed to protect you from tracking. The Privacy Sandbox was canceled. The cookies stayed, and then fingerprinting was officially permitted. Chrome's privacy problem did not get better over 6 years. It got more sophisticated, more technically evasive, and more explicitly permitted by the company that controls the browser. There is something that happened in a lawsuit that most people heard about for one day in 2024 and then forgot. But it is the most important piece of evidence available about what Google knew when they knew it and what they chose to do about it. In June 2020, a class action lawsuit was filed against Google, alleging that the company had been tracking Chrome users who were browsing in incognito mode. The lawsuit alleged that even when users specifically switched to Chrome's incognito mode because they wanted privacy for a specific search or a specific website, Google's analytics, advertising, and tracking tools embedded across the web were still collecting data from those sessions. The lawsuit was filed on behalf of millions of users who had used incognito mode specifically because they believed the dark screen and the hat icon and the message that said, "Now you can browse privately," meant that they were actually private. The lawsuit sought $5 billion in damages. Google fought it for 4 years. And then, when a federal judge rejected Google's request to dismiss the case and a trial date was set, Google settled. The settlement required Google to delete billions of data records collected from more than 136 million people in the United States who had been browsing in incognito mode. It required Google to update the incognito mode disclaimer. The updated disclaimer now reads that this mode will not change how data is collected by websites you visit and the services they use, including Google. Google also had to change the description from "you can browse privately" to "you can browse more privately." More privately. That is the phrase Google's own legal process produced as the accurate description of incognito mode. Not privately, more privately. But the part of the settlement that you need to read and sit with is what the lawsuit extracted from Google's own internal documents. The internal communications that were surfaced during the case included Google employees describing incognito mode in specific terms. They called it a confusing mess. An executive argued internally that incognito should not be called private because it risked exacerbating known misconceptions. And in what is possibly the most damaging internal admission produced by any tech company in a privacy case, employees called the incognito mode description effectively a lie. Google employees, writing internally about their own product, used the phrase effectively a lie to describe the privacy promise that 83 billion users were relying on when they opened the dark-themed browser window. The settlement did not require Google to pay any damages to the class members. The plaintiffs originally sought $5 billion and received zero in individual compensation. Google deleted some data records and updated a disclaimer. And the browser that its own employees called effectively a lie when describing its privacy mode continues to be the default browser on approximately 65% of all devices connecting to the internet worldwide. The antitrust case produced a finding that belongs in the same category as those internal communications. In August 2024, a federal judge in the United States District Court for the District of Columbia issued a 277-page ruling that reached a specific conclusion. Google is a monopolist, and it has acted as one to maintain its monopoly. That ruling was the result of a 9-week bench trial. It found that Google had used its control of distribution channels, specifically including Chrome, to maintain an illegal monopoly over general search services and search advertising. Nearly 40% of Google's search volume in the United States is generated through Chrome, according to the Knight Georgetown Institute. Chrome is not just a browser. Chrome is the mechanism through which 40% of Google's search monopoly is maintained. Every default search in Chrome goes to Google. Every Google toolbar embedded in Chrome feeds the search data back to Google. Every Chrome user who signs into their Google account creates the specific link between browsing behavior across the web and the search data and the Gmail data and the YouTube data and the Maps data that allows Google to build the comprehensive behavioral profile that is the asset its advertising business monetizes. The Department of Justice asked the court to force Google to sell Chrome. They argued that Chrome, in Google's hands, is an instrument of monopoly maintenance and surveillance that cannot be fixed by behavioral remedies. The court declined to order the sale in September 2025, finding that behavioral remedies were sufficient. The DOJ in 35 states filed an appeal in February 2026. The fight over whether Chrome should exist as a Google product is ongoing in federal court right now. The government of the United States has argued in a federal proceeding that Chrome's existence as a Google product constitutes an illegal restraint of competition so severe that the company should be required to sell it. That argument has not been decided in the government's favor yet, but the fact that it is being made, backed by 277 pages of judicial findings about how Google uses Chrome to maintain an illegal monopoly, is the specific legal context that makes every privacy claim Google makes about Chrome's future development maximally difficult to take at face value. Now let us talk about the thing that is happening right now on Chrome that most users do not know about, and that directly affects the practical privacy experience of anyone who has been relying on Chrome with extensions to compensate for its surveillance-friendly defaults. On July 24th, 2025, Chrome permanently disabled all remaining Manifest v2 extensions across all standard Chrome channels. The full uBlock Origin extension was removed from the Chrome Web Store in late 2024. Chrome permanently disabled all remaining MV2 extensions in July 2025. uBlock Origin Lite is available for Chrome. uBlock Origin Lite is not uBlock Origin. The original uBlock Origin used the Web Request API to intercept every network request Chrome was about to make, compare it against maintained lists of known tracking and advertising servers, and block those requests before they loaded. This real-time interception with no hard limits on rule counts was what made the extension effective, not just against known ad domains, but against the constantly evolving techniques that sophisticated trackers use to evade blockers. Manifest v3's replacement API, the Declarative Net Request API, has hard limits on filter rules and lacks the dynamic filtering capabilities that made the original effective. The result is a Chrome extension ecosystem in 2026, where the most trusted ad and tracker blocking tool that existed for over a decade has been replaced with a reduced functionality version that the advertising industry's own tracking methods are already finding workarounds against. Meanwhile, Firefox continues to support the full Manifest v2 version of uBlock Origin. The same extension, with the same capabilities, blocking the same tracking infrastructure at the same rate, functions on Firefox exactly as it did before Google redesigned its extension framework in a direction that served its advertising customers rather than its users. The fingerprinting story, the privacy sandbox cancellation, the incognito lawsuit, the antitrust ruling, and the uBlock Origin removal are not 5 separate privacy problems. They are 5 expressions of the same underlying reality. Google is an advertising company. Chrome is an advertising tool. The privacy features that Chrome has added over the years, the incognito mode, the privacy dashboard, the tracking protection settings, are the interface layer that makes the tool feel like it is working for you. The actual architecture underneath that interface is working for Google's $350 billion advertising business. This is not speculation. It is the conclusion that emerges when you combine what Google's own internal documents said about incognito mode, what the federal court found about Chrome's role in maintaining an illegal search monopoly, what 6 years of privacy sandbox promises produced in terms of actual privacy improvement, what happened to the 39 million users of the most trusted privacy extension in browser history, and what Google announced in 2026 when it removed its own prohibition on advertising customers fingerprinting Chrome users. When you hold all of those facts simultaneously, the picture is not ambiguous. Chrome was designed to collect your data for an advertising business. Every element of that design has been maintained, defended, and where necessary legally argued for in federal court. And the privacy features that were supposed to change that design have either been canceled, weakened, or reversed. Here's what you are going to do. Not someday, today. This is a 15-minute process, and at the end of it, you will have meaningfully improved your actual privacy, rather than the feeling of privacy that Chrome's settings menu creates. Open a separate tab and go to Mozilla. Org. Download Firefox. The download takes under 2 minutes on a standard internet connection. Open the installer. When it asks whether you want to import your data from Chrome, say yes. Your bookmarks, your browsing history, your saved passwords will all transfer automatically. You lose nothing. Open the Firefox extension store and search for uBlock Origin. Not uBlock Origin Lite, the original uBlock Origin. Install it. This is the extension that Chrome permanently disabled in July 2025, specifically because it was effective. On Firefox, it works exactly as it did before Manifest v3 ended it in Chrome. The combination of Firefox's enhanced tracking protection, which is enabled by default and blocks known fingerprinting scripts and third-party trackers across the web, with uBlock Origin's real-time request interception and filtering, creates a browsing environment that is not comparable to Chrome with any privacy settings enabled. The difference is not marginal. It is the difference between a surveillance system with privacy-labeled settings and a browser that was architecturally designed to protect you rather than to profile you. Go into Firefox's settings and change the default search engine from Google to DuckDuckGo. DuckDuckGo does not log your searches. It does not build a search history associated with your identity. When you search for something, the transaction is complete and the record ends there. Nothing is retained. Nothing feeds into a behavioral profile. Nothing influences what you see tomorrow based on what you searched for today. Set Firefox as your default browser in your system settings. Then uninstall Chrome. Not just close it, uninstall it completely. On Windows, go to Settings, then Apps, find Google Chrome and click Uninstall. On Mac, drag Chrome from your Applications folder to Trash and empty the trash. On iPhone or Android, press and hold the Chrome icon and select Delete or Uninstall. The reason you uninstall, rather than simply stop using it, is that an installed Chrome may still run background processes, sync data, and update itself even when you are not actively browsing in it. The last thing you should do is go to My Activity. Google. Come right now and sign in with your Google account. What you will find there is the specific thing that converts the abstract concern about data collection into something concrete and visible and impossible to dismiss. It is a complete searchable record of your internet activity, organized by date, linked to your identity, retained by default unless you have specifically changed the settings, and dating back to the year you created your Google account. The searches you made when you were worried about something and did not know who to ask. The medical symptoms you looked up at 3 a.m., the financial questions you typed when you were stressed, the news articles that document your political information habits, the products that document your purchasing psychology. Every one of them time-stamped, every one of them linked to your name, every one of them part of the behavioral profile that Google uses to place you in the advertising categories that its customers pay to reach. Then go to Ad Settings, Google, come. Look at the categories Google has assigned to you based on your behavior, your estimated age range, your inferred interests, the topics that Google's systems have determined describe you based on what you have done in Chrome, in Google Search, on YouTube, in Gmail, across every Google product whose use has contributed data points to the profile. That profile is what Google's advertising customers buy access to when they want to reach you. Your name is not in the transaction, but you are absolutely in the transaction. The profile built from your years of Chrome usage is the product being sold. And the 83 billion people who are using Chrome in 2026 as their default browser, trusting that colorful circle icon as a neutral tool, are the 3. The 83 billion people whose behavioral profiles constitute the asset that generates $350 billion in annual revenue for one company. You can remove yourself from that transaction today. It takes 15 minutes, it costs nothing, and the browser waiting for you on the other side was built by a nonprofit organization whose business model does not require knowing everything about you. Privacy is not dead for people who choose a browser that was not designed to end it.